Hi there, I'm Emma Hollywood and welcome to And the Show Goes On. I'm an actress and, like so many, I'm navigating the highs and lows of this unpredictable industry. But there's more to my story. I'm also living with an invisible illness. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the show really does go on. In each episode, we'll dive into the world of acting, uncovering the realities behind the glitz and the glamour. We'll talk openly about the challenges, from auditions to the art of managing it all with health challenges that don't take a day off. And I won't be alone. I'll be joined by incredible guests, actors, advocates, and others who share this journey. Together we'll share stories, laughter, insights, and inspiration to help you keep pushing forward no matter what. So join me every week on And the Show Goes On. Let's navigate this path together with resilience and a sense of humour, because no matter what, the show goes on. Hello and welcome back to And the Show Goes On. For today's podcast interview, I speak to the amazingly talented Amy Trigg. Amy is an Olivier Award winning actor who's been involved in many projects on screen and on stage. You probably best know her for her role in The Little Big Things in the West End. It was so lovely to speak to Amy, and I really hope you all enjoy this episode. Hi Amy, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. So thank you so much for coming on. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Of course. No, thank you for having me.
Just to start, do you mind telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am an actor and writer. I'm also a wheelchair user, and I've been acting for a while since I graduated drama school, which was 2013, and then writing kind of professionally for about, I don't know actually. I don't know when the starting point was, but since around lockdown, so 2020, I guess.
Yeah, amazing. How did you get into acting and also writing, like you mentioned before? How did you get into it?
Well, with acting, it was something I was always interested in performing when I was growing up. I was like the classic kind of wanting to perform for my parents and grandparents and cousins and brother all the time. And also I guess my parents like really liked theatre as well, especially my mum. And then my dad kind of got into it, and now he's that we're all stagey.
Oh, amazing.
Although they wouldn't be caught dead on stage, like they were
Oh, really?
that's their idea of hell, I think. But they really enjoy it, and I think as soon as I showed a bit of an interest, particularly in musicals when I was younger, they wanted to feed that interest. So we tried going to like as many shows as we could, and then that branched off into plays and everything. So growing up, I always knew I wanted to be involved, but I wasn't quite sure how. So I thought I might go into directing or makeup. I did my work experience at Charles Fox
Oh, wow.
makeup like shop in Covent Garden. Yeah. And so I knew I always wanted to do it. But acting, it was one of those things where I thought, I know I want to do it. It just looks quite hard and I don't know what the route would be. But then I decided to just do it anyway and auditioned for drama schools and kind of, I guess, went quite a traditional route,
Yeah.
if you want to say that's the traditional route. Partly because I that was the route I saw, when you're looking in theatre programs and you see where people are trained, that's what I did. I just saw where people went to train, like people that I admired, and auditioned at those schools. So that was my route into acting. And then writing, again, always had been interested in storytelling and maybe didn't feel smart enough to be a writer. I think it got to kind of A level, A levels, and I was a bit intimidated by the amount of technical things, and I
Yeah.
just didn't really feel smart enough. So abandoned creative writing for quite a while, but I started doing improv, and then that led to sketch comedy, and then that led to doing some stand up. Not much. Like I always say stand up, and I think everyone thinks, oh, like I've toured. I haven't. I did a few gigs, and then that led to essay writing, which led to me writing my first play, and then haven't really stopped since.
Oh, amazing. What kind of things do you write? Like is it plays, or is it just kind of bit of everything?
It's a bit of everything. I started with plays. I wrote my first play called Reasons You Shouldn't Love Me, which I sent to anyone who would read it, which
Yeah.
which was scary, but I thought, well, how else am I going to do it at this point? And yeah, that was a play, and it won the Women's Prize for Playwriting, which was very nice. But then after that, I've kind of I always try and have a theatre project on the go. Like I'm writing a couple of plays at the moment, like an adaptation and an original play, and then the book for a musical, which is very exciting because I love musicals.
Hmm.
Um, but then a lot of it is TV. I've done a little bit of radio, but I really love writing for TV. It's a really long process. I think people maybe don't realize how long it is. I kind of say to friends and family, I'm like, oh, I'm still working on this project. And they were like, weren't you working on that like 2 years ago? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, still at a similar point, but we're getting there.
Yeah. How did you like get into like the writing bit of your job?
It's a good question because with writing, I did get into it at a kind of good time. And I feel bad saying that because it was in 2020. But I sent off my play to lots of schemes and competitions at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and then managed to get on quite a lot of schemes. So I did kind of BBC Writers' Room, which is an amazing place to go and like learn the ropes for screenwriting, which again, that was an incredible experience. And I think the first time I actually wrote a script and finished a script, which is a really good exercise for a writer to do because you often talk to
Yeah.
writers who are like, oh, I want to write, but I don't know what to write. And it's terrible advice. And it's so annoying when people say it, but you just got to do it. Otherwise, it just never gets done. And then Royal Court Introduction to Playwriting, I did, and a few others. And I ended up doing all of them in that year. And it felt a little bit like and doing my own little MA in writing because I
Yeah.
was just constantly on Zoom and watching webinars and doing workshops and reading loads of scripts. So that kind of gave me my foundation for me personally. But again, everyone comes into it differently. It's similar to acting. And now I guess I do the work that is suited for me to me, and especially with TV and theatre to be fair, but there's always a team guiding you. You've always got
Yeah.
producers and script editors and everyone. So I never feel like I'm really on my own when I'm writing, apart from when I'm literally redrafting and sat on my own in the
Yeah.
office, just kind of not seeing anyone.
Yeah. Do you have a preference between acting and writing, or do you kind of love them both equally? Or like do they give you different
Yeah.
things, I suppose?
Yeah, they give me different things. I think that, yeah, that's the thing. But I love them equally. And
Hmm.
I think at the beginning I always thought I would always love acting more than writing. But actually, I really love writing. I love sitting down and getting into my own little world and creating the character. I guess it's having more creative control is quite nice as well, with writing. And also, I kind of like the puzzle of redrafting, which I think a lot of writers hate.
Yeah.
But I quite like doing that. I feel like it flexes a muscle in my brain or something like that that I enjoy. But I always love acting, and that love for acting has never gone down because of the writing.
Yeah, 100%. So you're an actor, but you're also, you're a wheelchair user. What's your experience been like as a disabled actor? And have you experienced any um ableism or issues when it came to, inclusivity, or has it been okay? Or what's your experience been of it?
Yeah, I think my experience has often been being a guinea pig in a lot of scenarios. When I was auditioning for drama schools, for instance, a lot of the
Yeah,
drama schools I was approaching, they were like, "Oh, we've never had anyone who uses a wheelchair in before, but like, come and check it out." And then I turn up, and there'd be no lift, or they'd it just wasn't right. But they didn't know, and they were trying, to
yeah,
be fair. And then when I got into Mount View, which is where I trained, I did musical theatre at Mount View for 3 years, and it was a learning curve for all of us involved. How do I adapt this? How do I do that? But I think I could choose to be frustrated about that. But actually, it gave me so many valuable tools for the industry, particularly at the beginning of my career, because I was taught how to adapt quite quickly
yeah,
and how to voice what I needed in a confident way, which really helped. But then in the industry, it's changed a lot since I graduated. When I left drama school, it was really quiet, and there weren't really I guess producers and casting directors couldn't quite see the vision of having a disabled actor in a role that's not necessarily written as disabled, but it doesn't really matter if they are or they aren't. And that's the biggest change I think that's happened in the last however many years, is that now my agent can quite not easily, because he obviously, he does his job and his job is not
yeah,
easy, but he can get me seen for those roles by just being like, oh, Amy might be good for this part. So that's been a big change. And I think that was the struggle in the first few years of just not being able to get in the door for a lot of roles. And especially at that time, there weren't many characters who were disabled that I could audition for. And um, yeah, it was tough. The first few years were really tough, and you kind of question a lot of things. And even when I was in the room, there were, issues. I'd turn up and it maybe wouldn't be accessible, which was always frustrating because I've been with my agent since I graduated drama school. So he's
Yeah.
really on it with access stuff. And we were always really clear with people. But for years, people didn't really understand access riders and everything. And I think it was just kind of an extra document that didn't really properly get seen to, or
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
wasn't thoroughly checked. And nowadays that's different, thank goodness. But I definitely turn up to do a show or turn up to set and there'd be no toilets that I could use, or there'd be steps and I'd be segregated from the rest of the rest of the production, really. And that can be quite a lonely experience. So I think in those first few years, loneliness really set in as well, because even when I was in the room, I felt quite othered. And then also people's language, I remember, really kind of bothered me as I was kind of coming up. Not so much now. I think I've got quite a good way of either dealing with it or, saying something in a polite
Yeah.
way. Because often people just don't know. And I try and always remember that most people don't have bad intentions when they get something wrong. So I never like to, I don't know, be mean to them and be like, you got this wrong. But, I've been referred to as the wheelchair when at
Yes. Yeah.
work. And that's quite jarring because you're kind of like, oh, am I here just because of my wheelchair, or am I here because I'm a person and an actor who can offer something?
Yeah.
And also being questioned whether I was gonna kind of find work. A lot of people are like, well, how is this going to work then? Or, but you can't do this because you're in a wheelchair. And yeah, there's still flickers of that every now and then, but there's a lot less. So they were the main hurdles when I was coming through.
Yeah. How did you deal with like speaking up for yourself? Because, and I've said this in many interviews, but I've always kind of struggled to stand up for myself. So how do you deal with that? Are you quite good at doing that now, or is it something you still struggle with?
I am terrible at speaking out and doing something when it's me in my personal life.
Yeah.
Like I struggle asking for ketchup in a cafe. But I
Yeah.
think there's something in me with work because of maybe what I had to deal with in the first kind of few years that feels quite confident if I say it in a way that is matter of fact. And I always try and stick to the facts and not let emotion
Yeah.
get the better of me. Because there are obviously days, what people don't see is if you've had a day where you've struggled to get on a train and then you've got off the train, you've gone to work and there's no toilets, and then this happens, and this happens. Obviously, your emotions and your frustration up here. But I always try and, when I speak out, make sure I'm just saying the facts. Or if I'm struggling as well, that's what my agent is always up for doing for me as well, if that's the right course to take. But generally, I
Yeah.
find people are quite receptive if I just, speak to them like I'm not telling them off, but just
Yeah.
saying no. I try and prevent it as much as possible now by being really, really thorough, like with a really good access rider and double checking things before and
Yeah.
nipping things in the bud earlier. I feel always helps because I don't know about you, but I know if I don't say anything and it carries on, it will get to a point where I'm like, well, I can't say anything now because it's like when someone gets your name wrong the first time and you don't correct them, and
Yeah,
then two
yeah,
weeks
it's too
later
late
you're
now.
still
You've got a
Hannah,
different
and you're like,
name.
oh, well, okay, I guess I'm Hannah now.
How would you make the industry more accessible in your opinion?
Oh, yes. So I think access coordinators are doing a very good job of making sure that everything is smooth sailing. Because yeah, there's nothing worse than turning up and feeling like a problem, even though you're not a problem, and thinking, oh, I'm not going to get asked back because they're going to see me as a problem. And that's really frustrating. So having an access coordinator there with who understands access riders to make sure it's smooth sailing, I think improves your chances of having, being asked back and everything like that. And then I also think having um, the right people at the top of projects or there from the beginning, like producers, directors, writers. And I don't necessarily mean everyone has to be disabled, but like having people that are forward thinking enough to, because it's not just disability, it's making sure that the industry is diverse, isn't it? So
Yeah.
making sure people who are on projects are forward thinking and questioning when certain people are missing from projects, I think is quite important, because otherwise it's not going to happen, in my opinion, if we just carry on, um, yeah, letting that happen. So building the
Yeah.
right rooms, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So you've done like stage and screen jobs. Do you have a favorite? Like, do you prefer stage to screen or vice versa? And do you find one more accessible than the other?
Oh. Well, firstly, I guess for me, it kind of depends on the job.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I love about screen work as an actor is the majority of the screen work I've done, I've kind of popped in for a day or a few days or a week, or I've kind of been in and out of a project, which means that I can fit my writing quite well
Yeah.
around it. And I feel like I end up having a little bit more of a social life and
Yeah.
stay on top of life things. So that's one of the reasons I really like screen work, because it offers me that. Um, and I think I quite like the challenge of it being fast paced and just having to do it and taking notes quickly and everything. They're the things I love about screen. But it's very hard to beat the community and the buzz of theatre. So, like right now, for me, I would love to get back on stage and show soon, just to have that buzz. And also to have more time on a project and feel like you've been able to explore it more in depth, I think is something that I crave quite a bit. Um, and then with which one is more accessible? Again, I feel like it kind of depends on the job, but I feel like TV are maybe a little bit more on it than theatre, purely because theatre, I guess, is restricted
Yeah.
from certain theatres being very old. And then other newer theatres just not having been set up. Like they were obviously built, you know, closer to our time, but before they'd thought, oh, we might need accessible toilets backstage, kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
think there is that restriction still with theatre, whereas TV can, you're creating a production, you're choosing where you're shooting and, where unit base is. So I think for that reason, possibly screen might be a little bit more accessible. However, I feel like the hours that people have to do for screen work is quite intense. And
Yeah.
depending on someone's access needs, that can be quite tricky. So that's the kind of counterbalance, I guess. Not to
Hmm.
say that, I mean, obviously theatre when you're in tech, goodness me, you don't see the light of day. But
Yeah.
generally, once you're up and running, it's a little bit easier to manage.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Do you have a favorite job that you've done or like a specific moment in your career where you're like that is just the pinnacle of your career?
Yeah. Ugh. I mean, I'm lucky because I've had some really lovely jobs.
Yeah.
Like my time with the RSC was great because I love the work and I love the people. And again, I did a tour of Tommy that was really, I loved that job. And other really random jobs, like I did a project called Shakespeare within the Abbey at Westminster Abbey, where we just ran around Westminster Abbey performing Shakespeare like sonnets and speeches and songs.
Oh wow.
It was wild and it was like a really surreal moment. But I think it would be really hard for anything to beat the little big things,
Yeah.
just because of everything I got out of that show. I got to see it from workshop stage to, being on the stage, and got to kind of see that process and feed into it. And I loved the character. Like I knew I wanted to play that kind of character on stage, and I got to do it, and loved the material and the people. I mean, it was such a beautiful group of people that we're still very much in contact with, and I think that kind of says a lot. And also, I mean, it's no secret I met my fiance on that job, so
Oh
I think
really?
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
realize that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Jordan and I met on that job. We were doing the kind of workshops, and then we're in the show together. So
Oh wow.
it's probably quite hard to beat a show where you literally love the show and love doing the show, whilst also falling in love behind the scenes. Like that's quite a hard experience to beat, I guess.
Yeah, yes. I mean, like that is amazing. And I've interviewed like quite a few people who worked on the Little Big Things, and they've always said when I asked them about their favorite job, they've always said the Little Big Things. Like it
Yeah.
must have been such like an amazing job. And then you also won an Olivier, which is amazing, which is
Yeah.
Best Actress in a Supporting Role. What was that like? I bet that was just kind of insane.
Yeah, it was like so surreal. And yeah, so surreal. Even now, looking back at it, because a few weeks ago it was a year since I won it, which is yeah, weird to think about. So there was a lot of reflecting going on. Um, but even when the nominations were announced, like that was such a buzz and was kind of for me unexpected. I think I'm in the habit of never really expecting anything.
Yeah,
And I think maybe that's a little bit of a self-protection thing from auditions.
definitely. Yeah.
That I literally leave an audition and forget it's happened.
Yeah.
And if I get a call saying yay, I'll be like, oh, that's nice. But if not, I put that to bed. Um, so that alone was a buzz. And then the night was so much fun because we'd finished the show already. Like the show had been shut for a month or so, but we got to all perform together again on that night. So in Act One, we performed a little medley from the Little Big Things, and I remember like we were finishing the song, and I was shaking because there was so much adrenaline in me, and
Oh,
I was
yeah, I
trying
can
not to
imagine.
cry because I was looking around and I was like, oh, these are all my guys,
Yeah.
and that was really emotional. And knowing, seeing a show from workshop stage to Olivier stage is quite something and very special, and knowing like the writers and creative team and producers were there in that moment. It just felt really beautiful. Um, and then I'll be honest, I like sat down after the interval and like the little nominee section. And because I'd had such an adrenaline rush from performing, I kind of forgot that the category was coming up. So then when it happened, I think I fully blacked out. Yeah, I can't remember much. But it was a really surreal moment, and also just really fun because I trained in musical theatre and didn't have loads of success in getting in the rooms for auditions for musicals when I graduated and kind of gave up singing lessons to take up improv. And I just had started to accept that maybe I wasn't going to be accepted into the musical theatre world, particularly the mainstream musical theatre world. So to have that recognition and that kind of nod, it meant a lot to me in that moment, but also, like younger me, because I was like, yeah, we did work hard for this. Like we've been in the trenches.
Yeah, it would be crazy. Like, did you ever think that, when you were in drama school and you were having these moments where you felt kind of maybe a bit alone to, now you've got an Olivier? Like, that must be like crazy.
Yeah, 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 very surreal because when I was at drama school, I was struggling quite a lot with self-confidence, and I sometimes question whether I went to drama school at the right time for me because I don't think I really knew who Amy was when I was
Yeah,
18. And luckily my year group at Mount View were so lovely and I felt really supported, but I was still struggling. I had hypnotherapy in second year because I was just really struggling to get through some of the assessments and some of the performance aspects because my confidence was just not there.
yeah,
So, yeah, going from having to listen to hypnotherapy tapes before every performance to not having to do that and to yeah, being at the Royal Albert Hall in front of all those people was yeah, it was pretty cool.
yeah, it's amazing. You've had like many successes in your life, which is, because you are so talented. But also, like, how do you deal with rejection when like you were saying that you do an audition and then you kind of forget about it? And that's something that I do because I think when I first started my career, I was so like emotionally attached to an audition, and I'd be like up, like refreshing my emails constantly just to see if
Yeah.
like I heard something back. But I think like detaching yourself from the outcome is probably the best way. That, and do you have other kind of like advice to people with dealing with rejection?
It's really hard because sometimes I think I've got it mastered. And then every now and then there will be an audition where I am refreshing my emails and
Yeah,
I'm trying to convince myself that I'm not. Um, but it's hard because also sometimes you either really want the job or you need the job.
yeah,
Let's not beat around the bush. Sometimes the industry is very quiet, like at the moment, and bills need to be paid.
yeah,
So sometimes it's really hard not to. And I don't think we should beat ourselves up about that, or I certainly try and tell myself not to beat myself up about it. But I think protecting myself as much as possible really helps. Like my mate Matt, he told me to kind of get rid of audition sides as soon as I come out of the audition,
Yeah.
so they don't just like randomly appear in a drawer and remind me or anything like that. So I
Yeah.
do that, which is great, and then sometimes annoying if you get a recall and you're like, ah,
Yeah.
I
It's
threw
like,
away
oh,
all
I
my
need it now.
notes. Yeah. So I think that really helps me, and also just if I am dealing with disappointment, just letting myself sit with that for a little bit and not pretending it's not there. I'll have a day if I'm feeling a bit down about that, then I'll have a hot chocolate. I'll watch an episode or something and just give myself a bit of a breather. Or talk about it. Having
Yeah.
friends who are in the similar positions really helps, like really helps. I think all those things really. Yeah, it's hard though. I think it really is quite hard. And also speaking to my agent a lot really helps. And sometimes I still get frustrated when people don't tell you if you haven't got something.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
And I know that there's sometimes this argument that we won't let you know if it's at the first round. But at the moment, often there's only one round. Like so
Yeah.
many things are being cast from a singular self-tape. And it takes a bit of work to do a self-tape, setting up,
Yeah.
finding someone to read, learning the lines, blah blah blah, editing and everything like that. And I just think I wish we lived in a world, and I know that casting directors try their best, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're just overwhelmed and it's not possible. Um, but I know some casting directors who say, "Look, we will let you know if you got it, but if you haven't heard by this point," and I'm like, "That's cool. That
Yeah.
gives me
Yeah.
something." But I think that's what I struggle with, the unknown. I'd just
Yeah.
rather know,
Yeah.
you
I'm
know?
I'm the exact same. And it's
Yeah,
like I just think it would be better for us emotionally as actors if, we were told that we didn't get the job or,
yeah.
like if you didn't hear by a certain date, because a lot of the time you'll send off a self-tape or do an audition and then you won't hear and then you'll see someone else do that on the TV and you're like, oh,
Oh.
that's kind of ruined my show now.
Well, I guess I didn't get that one. Yeah, I
Because I didn't get
know.
that.
It's really tough. And I think the other thing I sometimes do, and whether I should be a bigger, better person or not is a good question. But if there was a job that I really wanted and I
Yeah.
didn't get it for whatever reason, I just will avoid watching it.
Yeah.
I try and watch things because often we are in a very small industry, and the pool of
Yeah.
disabled talent, you're often in the same audition rooms as people that which is quite funny. And often like me and my mate Elle, who I
Yeah.
think you spoke to, yeah, and we know that we're often up for the same things, but we
Yeah.
talk about it. It's quite like chill. Um, but sometimes it's okay to just not watch something, or
Yeah.
avoid it. If it's going to hurt you, then that's
Yeah.
fine, and people will understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. Like, because I went to an audition for like a stage thing like quite a few months back now, and someone said someone who was also auditioning said that, oh, if I don't get the job, I'll still like come and see it. And I was like, I don't know if I kind of feel bad
Good,
saying it,
yeah.
but I don't know, I'd feel kind of uncomfortable, because
Yeah.
as much as you try and like be the better person, like you said, you can't switch off your emotions. And there's obviously going to be a bit of you where it's like you are going to feel a bit, jealous. And I think that is normal.
Yeah, you just got to protect yourself, I think. And it is hard, but I do think there is something in, if it doesn't go your way, there's probably something around the corner, which is I
Yeah.
think really annoying to hear.
Yeah.
But I had an experience where um director Dominic Cook, he came to watch a play that I'd written and performed, and we had a meeting about my writing work. Then he got me in for an audition for a show that he was doing. I didn't get it. It was very valid. Like I Liz Carr played the part
Yeah.
beautifully, literally won an Olivier for it. She was amazing. And I went to see the show actually because I
Yeah.
really loved the play. And yeah, it was amazing. But part of me was like, oh, I really wanted to work with Dominic on like a play. But then he got me in for, a workshop R&D of Medea, and did that for a couple of days. And then when it got put into the West End, he got me in it, and that stemmed from within that story. I didn't get an audition. I got an
Yeah.
audition, but I didn't get the part.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes it works out in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. What advice would you give to aspiring actors who want to get into the industry, and specifically like disabled actors or chronically ill actors? What advice
Yeah.
would you give to them?
Um, I would say, ooh, so many things. I mean, it's similar advice that I'd give to anyone in that training is great, and whatever form of training that is, I really advise doing something. And that's not to say go to drama school for 3 years or go to drama school for a year. It's going to courses and
Yeah,
meeting other people, it's going to the odd workshop. Not only so you can build a community up and like meet other people so you don't feel as alone, but also that toolkit is invaluable. And I know for me, there's been certain jobs where I've been thrown into something and I'm like, oh, I wish I had that skill set before I came into this because I'd feel a
yeah,
lot more prepared and have
yeah,
less imposter syndrome. So I think training is invaluable, whatever that looks like for you. I think also not saying yes to everything is quite important. And I know that's really hard when you're at the beginning of your career, maybe, but sometimes I've I've been in positions where I've said yes to everything and I have burnt out very, very quickly and then
yes,
not being in a good position to do the work that I really, 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 really want to do. So it's not only looking after yourself burnout wise, especially with like fatigue, but
yeah,
also, doing the right projects that you believe in. And, I said earlier, making sure that the right people are involved. I think that's something that has been a lesson that I've learned, that it's okay to check in to be like, oh, can I ask who the creative team are? Or can I ask who's involved? Like,
yeah,
I think that's, a lesson to learn along the way. But then the other thing I would say is, um, don't worry. How do I word this? It's very hard when you compare yourself to your non-disabled peers
yeah,
because you could be having a very similar career, but theirs is seemingly on the upwards trajectory. Not always, because
yeah,
every career in the arts goes sideways and backwards and all things like that. But they seemingly are going up and up and like going into lots more auditions maybe than you. But learning to be okay with that and understanding that comparison is the thief of joy, I think is
absolutely.
quite important. Because it is a lot, when you when you have conversations and people are saying, oh, the industry is really quiet, and then someone says how many auditions they've had, and you're sat there like,
You're like, never mind.
yeah. And that's like that's not even reflective of agents. It's
Yeah,
literally like sometimes the industry is with that. Sometimes there are loads of parts where people they're happy to see disabled actors for them. And then sometimes there's just a period of time where they're like, we've done that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's hard. So I think, yeah, not comparing yourself too much.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that as well. I think like you said, the comparison is definitely like the thief of joy. Um, Thank you so much for speaking with me. Before you go, do you have any kind of like social media you want me to kind of tag below or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. I'm on
Hmm.
Instagram. I tried TikTok, failed miserably. I think I posted 3 videos, and one of them is me and my parents in a car wash. So I wouldn't say that's overly exciting. But yeah, Instagram is where I post kind of any acting or writing things that
Okay,
coming up. Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, I'll tag that down below. Thank you so much for speaking with me. It was so lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you. No, this has been lovely.
Thank you so much, Amy, for speaking with me. I hope you all enjoy this episode, and I'll see you next time. Bye.